Hi everyone, welcome to the Spiritist Talk from the Allan Kardec Spiritist Center of Danbury. We host these talks every first Friday of the month, always at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. If you miss it, don't worry, you can always watch it later in our channel. To do so, please subscribe and turn on the notifications. Also, please share this video with your friends. Tonight, the topic is The Art of Parenting by Jussara Korngold. Jussara is one of the founders and the president of the Spiritist Group of New York. She is also a member of the board of directors of the Tri-State Spirits Federation. She is the president of the United States Spirits Federation and the general secretary of the International Spiritist Council. But before we move to our guests, I would like to invite our friend Aldauri Soprani, who will read our message and say our prayer. Hey Aldauri, how are you?
Hi, how are you? Good evening, everyone. The reading tonight is from the book Happy Life. This book was written by Joanna de Angelis through Divaldo Franco. Never repay a wrong with revenge. Bad people are sick but do not know it. Give them medicine that will lessen their confusion and resist the eye for an eye approach. If others offend you, that's their problem. But if you offend others, the situation reverses and the problem becomes yours. The offender is always worse off. Be mindful of this and go your way in peace. Let's close our eyes and let's pray together and ask Jesus to bless us all this evening, especially our friend Jussara that has studied and prepared these lessons for us tonight. May the message go into our hearts and help us to make the changes and modifications so we can have a better life from now on. So be it.
So hello, good evening, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be here today to do this work with the Allan Kardec, that's the Society of Danbury. The topic that we were chosen to talk today is about parenting, about the art of parenting in a new era. And it's quite hard when we have to talk about education in general, especially when we have to talk about the education of children, the education of another human being, spirits that do not belong to us as we understand. So when we are thinking about raising a child and how we can really be more productive in terms of preparing them for life. But in our case, what concerns us more to prepare them for spiritual life is always very challenging. And of course, the more we grow as spirits, the more we have understanding about our situation, our objectives here on earth, the more difficult it becomes. Of course, the level of concerns that we have in educating children today is not the same like it was 120 to 200 years ago. So for starters, we understand that children, they come with a baggage of several incarnations, and that we have somehow to help them in guiding them to take the best out of this incarnation. In the past, they didn't even understand what to be a child really means. And today we have all this group of psychologists and in the field of pedagogical field, all of those that can give us so much more clarification so that we can do the best job that we can. We have been having these experiences with our parents. We can look behind and see what works and what doesn't work. Of course, we always have to take into consideration the particularity of each one of us, but we can use the experience that from our own way, the way we were brought up, in terms to try to educate our children as well. So the first thing, and of course we are talking here, our main goal here is to talk about more in terms of the spiritual level. I'm not an expert on other fields like, the pedagogical fields. I'm not a teacher. But I'm a serious student of Spiritism, and I'm always trying to learn and to understand more and to give any kind of contribution we can give in terms of help those that are in this way. So the first reflection that we have to think about is in terms of moral lessons. When we are educating children, even from the early age, we have to think about how we are impacting them in terms of their understanding and the level of moral that they can understand and apply later on in life. Of course, this is not only related to the parents, it always related to educators, to all families, to adults in general. So the children are going to be observing everything that is happening, and they are going to be reacting to that. They are going to imagine on their own world that if adults are doing certain things, so those are the things that they have to learn and they have to copy, to imitate many times. So that's why the moral in terms of examples, in terms of what we are doing, is very, very important. So we understand that selfishness, it's very damaging to our way of building ourselves, and this is something that we have been bringing for many incarnations. Kardec talks in the books of the codification about the damaging that selfishness, the way of thinking only about ourselves, can be really affect the development of our development and the development of the world. So what is the root of our society today? What have been doing wrong? Are we willing to go the extra mile? Can we change anything on what we do, say, or think to improve it? So many times we see an adult saying to their children, oh, you have to share your toys, but then you look at the adult and they do not want to share their things, and the children are observing that, and they are seeing, and that's the way they also start learning and how we have to be on top of our own behaviors. The spirits, Amelia Rodriguez, in the book Therapeutics of Emergency Therapeutics, she says that a child is field waiting to be sowing. So it's really like a field. What are the seeds we are going to be using when educating those children? The young man is already a fertilized field, but we will still have the possibility of helping them in guiding them on how to conduct their lives from their own. And the adult is already a harvest in production, and the quality of the seed we have determines the harvest. So the task of education, as according to her, is of the utmost relevance. But when we are talking about Spiritist education, this is what is going to really make a difference in terms of even saving this spirit. Because we have to understand that reincarnation for all of us mean to come here with a chance to do better, with a chance to grow, with a chance to succeed, and not to just do not take any kind of advantage from this time on earth and return to the spiritual realm, feeling regret for the time that we have lost. Kardec tells many things about in terms of moral lessons, and he says that it's exactly from the cradle that the children are going to be absorbing already the vices of society. All, prejudices, all, negative comments that we do, everything the children is observing how we are interacting with society. And to the point that he says that someday, hopefully, we are trying to pay more attention to that nowadays, but we still have a long way to go. The type of education that is based on moral, ethical values, the principles that we learn from Spiritist doctrine is going to be absorbed, it's going to be implemented as much as we understand that the intellectual education is important. Let's see this example here. What are we really teaching our children? For instance, this situation with, the not having time for our children. So here we see daddy, the child wanting to call the attention of the father, and the father always saying, not now, son, not now, son. And the children continues, dad, not now, son. It will come a point in time when we are going to be the ones wanting to get the attention of our children, or at this point, adolescents or young adults already, and they will say, not now, not now. And they will just be repeating a pattern that they were taught through our behaviors, through our actions. Another reflection that we have to think about here is in terms of religious and spiritual education. What is good for us, it has to be good for our children as well. And we understand in terms of Spiritism that is a complete set of moral and values. But how are we going to introduce our values, our spiritual religious values to children? This is something that we have to think about, especially because when we talk about Spiritism, it always has to come in mind what Kardec taught us in terms of, using reason all the time and questioning, explaining that Spiritism cannot be something that it's going to be imposed, but it's going to be brought to people with a way of leading them to the will to question, to find answers according to their own understanding, to their set of values, and to the knowledge they already gather. So here we see this picture that is saying, for fair selection, everybody has to take the same exam. Please climb that tree. And talking to different species. Of course, there are species that are not going to accommodate to that. So many times this is what we are doing, forgetting that each spirit that comes to us, ourselves, for example, we are different. We come from different backgrounds. We have different understanding. We have different motivations and even talents. For parents that have more than one child, in my case, I just have one, so I cannot compare. But we know how many, even in the household, when we have more than one child, you will see the children so different from one another. And that should be the first thing to lead people to think, oh my God, how come, if it's just genetics here that we are talking about, how come those two children sometimes can be so different even to the core? You see, so we have to be observing, not only in terms of people and children, but also in terms of our relationships, what we are expecting from others, understanding that we all have our talents, we all have our limitations, and not necessarily, one thing is one size fits all, right? As we say here. So let's try to teach children how to think instead of what to think. Even because we know that what we know so far, it may be very good already, very advanced, but it's not the end. There will be so much more. So we cannot say to our children, this is it. There is nothing more beyond this point. No, we have to make it possible to inspire them, their dreams, to help them in this reasoning, in trying to understand and going through the same values. I remember once my son always have some trouble in terms of being organized, and I wanted to help him. I'm very organized, and so I wanted to help him to organize his things. And but of course I had my formula of organizing things, and I wanted to kind of impose to him the methodology that I was applying to my life, to my things, believing that this would be the best methodology for him. So it came to a point that I said, you know what, I'm trying to impose to you my methodology, but perhaps you will find a way that it makes much more sense to you, will apply much more to you, and in this way you can continue doing it, as opposed to try to adapt to other people's way of doing things or thinking. So why we even sometimes when we are giving a recipe, so now you put a spoon of sugar, and only after the sugar you're going to add the butter. Why? Sometimes there is no reason for us to do that, and this is the way that we sometimes want to impose to our children, instead of allowing them to see how they can get to the same place with not necessarily using our same ways of doing it. And especially today, with all this information, the knowledge that we have, to try to impose any kind of educational methodology or impose things, religious thoughts. That's why, in general, we have been seeing this crisis of religiosity, because of the way some religious try to impose thoughts that today's science already proved it are no longer acceptable. So how can we tell our children, no, you have to believe this way because it is this way. This is the way that I learned. This is the way that it has to be. So we have to be paying too much attention to that. So this knowledge as well should work as an intellectual reaction, and not as a storage, because the human brain is not just a Dropbox, Google Drive, right? Teachings must lead the student into reflection and to form his or her own opinions from the given information or data gathered from observation. I remember that I started studying Spiritism very early, and I was always very curious about, learning and understanding things. And of course, when we were talking about reincarnation and thinking about reincarnation, I remember that one of the things that really made me believe in reincarnation was actually looking around and trying to equate the idea of a good and fair and loving God with the differences that we see in the world, the opportunities that one person versus another will have. I mean, how can we reason all that? How can we explain all that? So through reasoning, I said it can only be like this. It can only, only reincarnation can explain that. So in terms of bringing faith, in terms of bringing knowledge of spirituality to our children, we have to maybe have this dialogue with them as well and say, you know, this is the alternative. This is what we know and we understand. But I want you to reason about that. I want you to observe things and to come to this conclusion yourselves and not just imposing that. So one thing that Kardec tells us is that be conscious that a spirit reincarnated in a spiritist home mainly need the orientation that spiritism can offer. Otherwise, we would have to admit that we return to Earth without prior planning, navigating through life without direction, nor a compass, nor resources to do over the past and move forward to the future in a steady and sure pace. This is another thing that has to call the attention of us as spiritists. The children that we receive in our homes, they were not born in a spiritist home by chance. This is exactly the environment they need, and therefore we should not be careless with their spiritual education, with their spiritual guidance. We don't know how much they are going to absorb. They are going to be able to put in practice. They are going to be able to replicate what they learn from us. But it is our duty to understand that a spirit came to us with this kind of orientation. This is because it's exactly what the spirit is in need of learning. So Spiritism revives the lessons of Jesus. It's the best legacy to be given to children. It is, in fact, if in fact we understand the reach that Spiritism has in the reconstruction of human society, increasingly in need of understanding and peace, educate with greater commitment our children within the Spiritist principles, without fear, without hesitation, convinced that we are collaborating to its effective happiness and for the regeneration of the world. Spiritism is the complete philosophy that takes care of the spirit from the spiritual world and throughout every stage of our incarnated life. So again, we said that at the beginning. Our objective here, of course, is to talk about the parenting, the art of parenting our children on the spiritual avenue, on the spiritual side, not from the physical perspective, but on the spiritual perspective. Of course, every father and mother, they are, worried about the spiritual accomplishments of their children. We also be worried and we'll take care of the material accomplished in terms of how they have to develop and they grow and the values that they are going to learn to live in society. But here our objective is to call the attention of parents to not disregard the need of giving our children those spiritual values. We all know, we all understand, if we not even, you don't need even to be an adult to know that, because children also go through lots of struggles and challenges and difficulties. But as an adult, for sure, we have much more understanding of all that. And how many times in our situation, if it were not for the spiritual values that we have received, or that that now we embrace, it would be very hard for us to maintain balance, maintain hope, to keep going, and to overcome the difficulty. Even nowadays, all the situations that we are living have been very, very difficult. Just this week, I heard about a 10-year-old boy that was close to a window, and he lived in a high floor, and he was trying to open the latch of that window, which was locked, thank God, fortunately. And one of his parents caught him there, and he looked at him, what are you trying to do? And he said, I wanted to be free. I don't want to be home anymore. I wanted to be free. But almost indicating that he was even willing to jump through the window just to not be confined in an environment, so in a place. So we see that we are living in a very hard and challenging the situation, and we have to think about the emotional side of our children as well, the spiritual side. So all the spiritual value that we can give to them at this point, it is going to be very important for them in growing. So the third reflection is parenting in this new era. What kind of information we have? What would be the main objectives? We are not alone. Find help and tools. So what information, objectives am I capable? Can I do this alone? Where can I find help? What tools we have as parents? We see in the Spiritist Center many people that do not have that much understanding and knowledge already about Spiritism, and of course they will need more guidance in order to guide their children as well through this path. Maybe they didn't have this kind of information or values in their own home when they were growing up, but now it's something that they look for themselves, but they do not know how to do it, and they need help, and we are there exactly to help them. First of all, we have to understand that like it says here, this children is prone to receive external and opposing information to the one to receive it in the family, but surely the family values and concepts that were offered will prevail. I remember that my son was in the second grade, and he attended a school, and like many schools here in New York, I mean, we don't have any kind of religious orientation, and it's even forbidden in school to have, all of this variety of things. And this was what he had in the school at this point. And of course, it never troubled me, because it was even better, because then I could give him what I wanted to give to him. But then one day he came home and he said, you know what, Mom, you know how every time you talk to me about God and, everything that we say about God to a child, at that point, he was 6, not even 7-year-old. And I said, yeah. And he said, well, today my teacher in class said that she doesn't believe in God. I said, whoa. I went to the school and said, you know what, I'm okay with you not talking about any kind of religion, but how can you have a teacher that will tell, children that she doesn't believe in God? And so you see, this is what the world is going to present to our children. And but if they have values, if they have an understanding, instead of just absorbing, like he could have absorbed the idea of not having a creator, but at that point he already knew a little bit, and he said, well, there's something wrong here, and the family values and concepts may always prevail. So that's why we have to be thinking about it, about our responsibility of educating them, of guiding them, and what as family and a school, a Spiritist school in this case, educators can actually provide and give to better this. What kind of information we have? Well, although we have a lot of information at home, of course, education, external education is always important. In this sense, like we were saying, we are talking here about spiritual education. Many parents perhaps do not have all the information, all the understanding necessary to educate their children. So we can actually take them to the Spiritist education that we have in our Spiritist Center, and help them in this process of building their spiritual formation and providing them with more solid basis even for their future with everything that they have to learn. That's why when we are talking about spiritism, and one of the fields that it's very important for us as spiritists to commit to think about is the education of our children, the spiritual education of our children, and we with that, to be able to provide them with environments that will be enticing, with educators, spiritist educators that will try to gather more tools to be able to attract the students, to get the attention of students to the spiritual values that they are going to impart in those classes, those studies that we have. What kind of information do we have? There are spiritist parents that still mistakenly allow their children, when they come to age, to choose this or that religious path that will complement their educational background in the name of freedom and free will. Such a measure has created suffering and despair, grief and sorrow and pain, because once lost the opportunity of spiritual education in the proper age for implementing the gospel, the hearts are hardened like arid soil, repels good sowing, wasting a valuable help and guidance period. It is then that only pain and hard blows can bring atonements to renew and build. This is something very important for us to think about here. I know of many people that go to Spiritist Center that have children or teenagers, but they think about everything in terms of, material life to provide for them, but not spiritual, moral, ethical, to give them spiritual, moral, ethical values like we can provide in the Spiritist Center. And many times they say, they come with all the excuses. In this way, we see that it's in spite of having, of course, love for the children, it's something that on the back of their mind is not that important, because there is no other reason to explain why they are not taking their children to find and to get from an early age the same kind of support that they are looking for themselves. And so they say, oh, perhaps the other parent is not, do not share the same beliefs. Or maybe, it's like myself. I choose what path I wanted to pursue. I will give the same freedom to my children. But we don't give children their freedom when it comes to a formal education, when it comes to go to school or not, when it comes to hygiene, when it comes to, nourishing, feeding themselves. Why are we not going to think about the most important thing for them, that is actually to nourish, to feed, to enlighten themselves in terms of spiritual values? And many times when we wake up to that, it may be already too late. It doesn't mean that when we give all of this to them, that they are going to follow the same path that we are. But at least the root is there, the seed is there. And as we understand that Spiritism is a philosophy of life, that it helps us to cope, to deal with things in our day-to-day lives, to become better, and to fulfill what came here to fulfill, which is the betterment of our own selves, we having the basis, having the understanding, even if we do not set up foot in our Spiritist Center, we already know how we have to act. We already have the basis and the understanding. So this is so important for us to think about and to be able to provide to our children. And that's why when we are talking about Spiritist education in a Spiritist Center, we are not just talking about, a class where we put some toys or put a screen and let people there doing whatever, or while their parents are in another room learning about Spiritism. No, it has to be well conducted, well guided, because those are precious minutes that may become so, so important in their future. So our responsibility as Spiritist parents in the new era, are we ready to receive the second and third generation Spiritists that are already incarnating on Earth? Well, that's a very good question, right? Something for us to think about. Those spirits that are reincarnating now, hopefully they are better than we are, right? This is what we want. This is what a world in transition is all about. Each time we're receiving spirits that have walked in the field of experience and spiritual growth a bit more than we did ourselves, or something that we are just doing now. So I hope, of course, that in the future, in my next incarnation, I'm going to be better than I am right now, because this is the way things go. So now we are here receiving and preparing our planet to each time receive more enlightened spirits in the sense of their spirituality, not only in terms of technological possibilities, but also in terms of spiritual possibilities. And how can we better equip ourselves in order to provide to them with something that perhaps we don't even have? It's like giving the opportunity. Let's say that you are a parent of a child that since very, very early age demonstrates a tremendous ability to play the piano, or start reading and writing at the age of 2, for instance. I mean, none of the parents went through that. It's hard for us to understand, but we will try our utmost to understand what would be the best course direction for us to take with a child that will present this kind of characteristics. In terms of spirituality, it's the same thing. So in this case, if the parents say, I don't even like music, I don't even like the piano, but your son or daughter is a genius in the piano, and then you're just going to ignore that. Or you can say, I don't even like spirituality, I don't even understand about God, and you will leave your child deprived of something that is longing for, that it wants to pursue. So we have really to think about it and to pay attention to it. So what kind of information we have? How can we prepare for these spirits? We have the Jesus examples. That is always going to be our first thing in terms of educating children, spiritually speaking. We have the Spiritist children's book that can assist us in explaining the basics. The Gospel at Home that we are going to talk after in a couple of minutes. Understanding what parenthood means in terms of the possibility that we have, how we have been in charge of educating another spirit's values, beliefs, reference, talks, information with people that have knowledge on the subject, attending even at the Spiritist centers classes that can allow us to get even more understanding and information, meetings with Spiritist instructors and team, knowledge that if we are not the one teaching our children, who is going to be teaching our children? So whatever good thing we miss to teach them, it means there is room for them to learn the opposite of what we are not teaching them. So that is why it's so important for us to pay attention to this. Always reflecting on the responsibilities and duties we have when educating children. Evaluate how much effort should be given in their character information to build an army, of good men and women contributing for a better earth, assisting children to choose nonviolence, leading our children to have a critical positioning of the world, awakening their spirituality, the belief in God, using always Jesus as our guide, building God's kingdom inside the children's heart, learning so we can better educate, respect to all and for all, teach the children that we are all children of God. So these are some things that we, in terms what are our objectives. We want primarily them to be what we learn in the Gospel according to Spiritism in chapter 17, the item, the good person. We want them to be good person. We want them to learn those moral values. This is greater than just labeling them under one religious or other religious denomination. I mean, a religious denomination, I mean, it's not a stamp that is going to guarantee the quality of what goes on in their souls. If we are not just teaching them, if we are showing that or doing that just because the whole world does that, because this is the way people do, without actually showing to them through examples, through reason, that this is the best course of action, how can we imagine they are going to be doing this? So this is what we have to be really working for, in order to build a solid foundation for our children. And it is in our hands. And as spiritists, we have no excuse. I mean, I know it's hard. There is even this passage in the Gospel according to Spiritism when they talk about the ingratitude of children, where they say, okay, parents, I do understand that you did your best and you are not seeing the results of what you did. But still, this is what you have to do. And do not dismay, because the seeds are there and they are going to grow, because before anything else, they are children of God. And very much like ourselves, that we cannot say how long we have loving spirits that have been dedicating themselves to build up this spiritual reasoning that now we are trying to pursue. And now it's showing up, it's happening. But for how long we have been denying this? For how long they have been trying to lead us through this way, to guide us, to motivate us, and we have been refusing. So we cannot give up, especially our children. They are not there by chance. We know and we understand in terms of the planning of reincarnation that there is a reason why they were placed next to us. Those spirits were placed next to us. And there is a way for us to reach them and to work the field the best that we can. And so then what we can say is, here, God, here it is, the child, the spirit that you have given to me, and how I have been prepared, the spirit, to be able to receive you and to return to you, and very much like ourselves on the path of return to our Father in heaven. I want to talk about the prodigal son. So as spiritists, individuals, family, responsible for spiritist centers, we have our share of responsibility. Educators, we have our share of responsibility, and try to do the best that we can, not saying, oh, I have nothing to do with that, or this person or this child. No, once it is there, we have to do our best and to contribute as well. Are we capable? Well, to love means to find the best possible preparation to be the best sower possible. If there is love, if there is really the desire to do something about it, we will find a way. And we will be surely inspired by the good spirits, even if it is only to find someone that will be able to give the guidance that we still are not capable of giving. And this is like, like those angels that all of a sudden come to our life and they said, oh my God, thank God for sending this person to my life. Thank God for sending this Spiritist center, for sending this Spiritist teacher to my child. Everything has changed. It is all the result of love. Following Jesus' steps all the way, making efforts so our kids have just chance to follow our examples. Because again, it doesn't matter what we say, it is important what we are doing. So good habits, it starts with us. We cannot impose good habits in our children if we are not practicing them. And also try to curb any negative impulse that we may have. And of course, since we are not perfect, we understand that we all have our imperfections. And if we acknowledge them, and if we have a way, let's try not to display them in front of our children. And again, the gospel at home. Can I do this alone? Where can I find help? Are you really alone? Well, we have Jesus, the good spirits, the family, school teachers, Spiritist Center friends, Spiritist Center facilitators, and our own faith, our own way of being. So at times it can be very challenging. It can be very hard for us to find ways, but we have to understand that we never receive a burden greater than or heavier than we can actually cope with. And we have to keep our calm. We have to trust the good spirits. We have to trust in God and keep on going and asking always for assistance and guidance. That's why we have this beautiful Spiritist community, and where we can go to people, where we can go to places and ask for help when we are in need of it. But the best help that we can start, it's one that we can do in our own homes, is the gospel at home, which vibrations of the home, loving gathering moment, this concept of praying, the protection for the home, and the well-being of the family. We have to understand that many times people come and say, oh, but I'm the only one that believes in Spiritism in my home, and my family do not want to participate. It's not about Spiritism. It's about having a spiritual moment with your family. It doesn't matter whether you are using a Spiritist book or not, or any other spiritual book. It is the moment where you are going to gather your family and say, listen, now this is the moment where we are going to sit together and we are going to talk and we are going to reflect about spiritual, ethical, moral behaviors. And it's a moment that we are going to invite protection to our home, that we are going to invite God, whatever name you call God, to our home, that we are going to invite good energy. You don't even need to say spirits to our home. and do that regularly, like they say here, at least once a week we can do this gathering. And we can, on thinking and having children doing this as well, we have to be sensitive to their level of understanding. So we cannot pick up a book that will talk about things that the child is not going to be able to understand. So we are going to get a book, and we are going to talk about moral values that children are going to understand, that are going to resonate in their hearts. And this is a beautiful, beautiful moment that we can share with our families. And especially in times like this, the pandemic, that we are all at home, and that for some families have been more difficult than others to keep peace, to keep harmony in their homes. This gospel at home can be the turning point for us to achieve balance in our homes as well. So it's an excellent example that we can teach our children. An excellent moment of sharing and opening up to one another, telling about, your worries, what has been troubling you, and how can one assist each other. So we should never dispense with this blessing. The Spiritist education, parenting is a mission, and we can become a great parent. There is still time. Yes, without a doubt, it is a duty in terms of being a mission that involves more than humanity can foresee. It is also their responsibility for the future. God placed the child under the guidance of the parents so that they proceed on the path of good and facilitate the child's task by giving the child fragile and delicate organization so the parents can make their mark. But there are those who are more interested in making their garden trees straight up than to make and produce many good fruits than to form the character of their own children. If these parents succumb, they will bear the grief resulting from this fall and will share the sufferings of their children in future lives for not having done what was in their power for the children to move forward on the road towards God. Perhaps the child that we have today and that we know that he's been giving us so much, that has been a challenge. So to say is exactly this child that in the past we have neglected, and now we have asked it again for this opportunity and to teach them what we didn't teach before when we had a chance. And now we are giving a second chance. So how many parents are happy with their grown children because they did not eliminate a bad behavior in the beginning of their bad tendencies? Whether they are indifferent or weak, they allowed the germs of pride, selfishness, and vanity to surround their heart, but later in life reappeared, reaped what they sowed, and were astonished by the lack of respect they have been treated. The future generations are no different than the current, with their flaws and moral lapses. If we do not treat with moral education from an early age, this will reflect in our society tomorrow. So, for us to conclude, Spiritist education and parents, great parents are always attentive to the 7 educational sins. Do not publicly correct your child. Humiliation can cause a lot of trauma. Do not be aggressive because we are going to be imposing fear. We have to be firm, but always with love. Do not over-criticize. Do not punish when mad or limits with no reason. Do not lose patience and give up teaching. Do not default on your own word. Do not destroy the hopes and dreams of a child. Great parents also get desperate, cry, feel guilty. However, they never give up on their children. They love to be parents. So this is very important for us to think about. Many people, when we have so many mothers, of course, of adults already in our Spiritist Center, they come, oh, if I had known, I would have done so differently. And I think somehow, all of us in all our lives, we will think about it. We will say, oh my God, if I had known better. Or sometimes, well, I do know better, but I still cannot do it. It is still so hard for me to do it, to overcome my own imperfections, my own weaknesses. But the thing is, we should never give up. Never give up on ourselves. Never give up on our children, on the spirits that God has given to us to educate and to help them grow. Because in the process of helping them, we are helping ourselves as well. So if times come where we think that we are failing, where things are difficult, do not feel guilt about it. Do not feel guilt about, getting desperate, crying, feeling perhaps even like a failure. No, just pick up yourselves and keep on going, because the law is that of progress. and tomorrow is going to be a new dawn. We can start again, we can try again. And if we really have the will to do it, there is going to happen. I love this American saying that goes like, if there is a will, there is a way. So we will find a way. Perhaps we haven't found it yet. Perhaps we still need to to gather a bit more of strength. But if we have the will, we may be sure that we will wind up succeeding, not only in bettering ourselves, but in bettering all of those that are here in this incarnation as our children, or that are here in this incarnation as being our students, and the different spiritist community in the Spiritist centers where we have the Spiritist education for children and youth. So let's keep on going. Let's keep on believing that God is pure wisdom, is mercy, is love, and it's giving us all the opportunities that we have to invite that loving soul to take this journey with us, to grow and to make it our love to each other even stronger than it already is. So let's keep on going. Let's keep on believing. Let's keep on asking for help if that is the case. And always, always with God in our minds, in our hearts, and Jesus as our model. May we all succeed in this challenging art of parenting, but one that will bring many rewards, much happiness to us when we understand that we have done the best that we could in order to participate in this creation journey and this possibility of helping the transition of our world, helping in guiding souls like others are guiding us as well to the good, to righteousness. Thank you so much for your attention.
Jussara, well, thanks a lot. It's a pleasure to have you with us. And this topic seems to be kind of easy, but in reality, it's very complex. And you address it very, very well. So, like in the name of our Spiritist Center, thank you for such a blessed talk and really enlightening parts. And also, thank everyone who is watching. We got great feedback in terms of people liking the way you approach and how you put your points and address all those important points. And this last slide is really it's really enlightening and really good in order to kind of bring it to our normal life, something that is so simple and important. So, and with that, I would like to close and say a few words so we can stay connected and enlightened by our Father, our Creator, our Master Jesus. We thank you both for this opportunity. We also thank all the benefactors that are always willing to help us. Thanks for all the protection, for always be with us, helping each one of us. Master Jesus, sometimes we do have a lot of challenges, and it seems so hard, but if we're your help and your guidance, we will all be able to overcome. May your light shine in this whole planet and also find a place in our hearts that we can all evolve, we can all go to our Creator. Thank you all. And again, please stay tuned for our next broadcast. And thanks again, Jussara, for finding time in your agenda to be with us.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.